It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
The reason I have faith in this, the reason I'm so positive on this, potentially unreasonably positive on this, is because I think this is a great landing spot for Eric Bieniemy's personality. Because who the hell on this offense is going to step to him and be like, oh no, I know better. Like, don't talk to me like that. Like, is there a general human respect and professionalism that should be happening that perhaps Bieniemy has pushed at times with certain players in his career that haven't responded well to that? Yes. But it's not like, LaShawn McCoy, who was very accomplished and at the end of his career, by the time he got to Kansas City and then was getting barked at and he didn't like it. And he's like, I'm LaShawn McCoy. Like, what are you talking to me like that before? There's nobody on this team like that. Terry McLaurin is the most established guy. And one, Terry wants to be coached hard. And two, he's still young and hasn't really accomplished anything. He's played in one playoff game in his career. Bieniemy's a two-time Super Bowl champion coming in. And I think when you have that status, the ability to push people, you're like, okay, well, this guy knows how to win. I better do what he says, and I'm gonna get on board with this. And I think that, and obviously working with Reed these last 5 years and seeing how Andy handles players, I think has probably made Bieniemy a better coach. And I think this is a really great landing spot for him to be able to push and teach and achieve that high level of detail that actually makes the offense work with, all of the X's and O's stuff that we talked about for the last 35 minutes.
No, I think so. And I do think there are people on the roster that you potentially got to be concerned about it. And it's the older guys. It's the Lenos. It's the Norwells. And I know everyone says, oh, they're not good players, so get them out of there. But as we just
Norwell
talked
probably
about.
ain't going to be here. But
yeah, but
sure.
As we just talked about, those guys, like they're rebuilding an offensive line, right? And he's going to be a piece of that. So, if he creates some friction with Leno, then Leno's got a good voice on the team. Like that is where it becomes slightly problematic, I think, is with the older guys on the team that have been around some different staffs and seeing how people communicate. And, we'll see how it goes. But I do think on the whole, this is going to be a thing that's very advantageous for this group. And I think, like you said, like there's not a lot of people here who've won a lot of games, even on the coaching staff, right? So getting someone in here who's going to kind of put his foot on your throat and say, this is how we're doing it, in a way is good, right? It's, like I look at, like Bill Callahan's a good example of this, right? So Bill Callahan is notorious for being exceptionally hard on the offensive line. And what he does is he gets them out there 20 minutes early. He keeps them 20 minutes late. They do very, very hard special strength exercises. And he talks meanly to guys, and he's kind of gruff and rough around the edges. But he does a good job of developing a galvanized group that are galvanized in hatred against him. And I think he does it on purpose. And he's very, very detailed, and he cultivates iron out of those groups. And so what I envision for this offense is something quite similar, right? Is a guy who's going to get you out early, keep you late, be very, very taxing. And so for a young group, a young offense, that's what you want. At some point, it's going to need to transition out probably. You know what I mean? You need to transition to the next phase of coordinator, the next phase of coach that's gotten you out of this developmental phase. But right now, I think this group needs somebody like this who's going to be very detailed, very absolute in their perspective, and very, very demanding, especially given, like you said, like the best player on this team has been in the league for like 5 years. Like they need someone to push hard and galvanize this group and turn them into iron. And I think you can do that. And I think if anybody's capable of doing it, he's capable of doing it. And it's just about kind of managing some of those fires that'll pop up, because inevitably there will be some.
Yeah, but I also think that's where leadership comes in. And I think they have the right kind of leaders here. And by the way, I think the quarterback is the right kind of guy too, frankly. Like, I don't know if Sam Howell can play, but everything I've heard about his demeanor and like his work ethic, I think he's going to be a really good fit with Eric Bieniemy. Bieniemy's talked about how Patrick Mahomes is a first in, last out kind of guy. I think we've seen through like NFL films and stuff, the kind of leader that he is, super intense, very demanding, very high caliber, like can have fun and all that kind of stuff. But he's a guy that is dedicated to the work. Guy like Travis Kelce, dedicated to the work. As much fun as Kelce is, like, that dude's a fiery competitor. And so, yeah, Shady McCoy, whose competitiveness and dedication was questioned far before he got to Kansas City, yeah, he didn't get along with Eric Bieniemy. And also, as Andy Reid said in an interview when asked about Shady's comments, he didn't talk about Shady directly, but he was like, so we've had a couple guys that have come in at the end of their careers and weren't quite as good as they used to be, and they didn't really like being told that. And so, yeah, Bieniemy probably told LaShawn McCoy, like, you can't do the stuff you used to. You're not there. And maybe that was him trying to positively coach him and be like, you can't do that anymore. Here's how to be effective. And Shady just heard, you're old and you suck now. And so he hates Eric Bieniemy. Like, I'm not really putting a lot of stock into what Shady McCoy says. I think that for a guy like Terry, who's got the respect of everyone else on that offense, and is a guy that wants to be pushed and wants to be great and is not really going to, fight back in a fiery way against a coach who pushes him. And like, look, he and Curtis played for Urban Meyer, he cross lines in terms of the way he coached guys. So I'm not saying EB is going to be a walk in the park, but like, they're used to being coached really, really hard in that Ohio State program. And so I think the leadership group, McLaurin for sure. I think Howell is the right kind of guy on that. And then you have a bunch of young guys who they don't really have a ton of power. I think it's the right group as well. I mean, Robinson obviously is going to take on a bigger role this year. Guy comes from the Alabama tree, so definitely used to being coached hard. I think it could be really fun. And, a guy, even within practice, like the barking that's going to happen between John Allen and Eric Bieniemy, like, that's probably going to be fun. Like, it's going to be a competitive environment. And it's on Rivera to ultimately kind of manage everything. And I think Ron is good at that. I think that's one of his strengths, is kind of having the feel and the pulse of the team as a whole. So I think in that way, it's also a good mix of personalities. You need some pushers on your staff. You need some good cops, if you will, on your staff. And we'll see how they fill out the rest of this offensive staff and who's there to be able to smooth things over if needed. But I really do like the fit. And like, I'm just more positive on this than almost anything else that's happened for this team in the last 3 years, if I'm being honest about it.
And I think you should be. I think you should be very positive. But again, like, being positive is also being realistic. I think that's what I'm trying to kind of temper here. Is like, I think that this is excellent. This is the best case scenario. You mentioned Greg Roman and him being an addition here. I think like Greg Roman would have been like a solid double. Like, you would have gotten on base. Everyone would have been really happy. The offense would have been fine. But I think this has the potential to be a home run. Now, like, there are some limiting factors here. We've talked about those ad nauseum. But this is an exciting thing. I'm not trying to say don't be excited. I'm saying everybody who's listening to this, be realistic about this. And understand
the excitement should cap at like, hey, if everything goes right, they're a top 10 offense. Not they're going to be the best offense in the league. And also, that's if everything goes right. Realistically, they're probably going to be better than they have been, and that's barely top
That's important.
Half.
And that's important. It's important that they're better, and I agree. I think they will be better, and I think, perfect scenario, like, they're the top 10 offense. But I think you're looking in that probably 18 to 13, 14, 12 range, like, it's a good range. Everyone's going to be excited about that. Team here will be excited. That's better than they've been in a while, like you pointed out. But I think it's important and that'll be good, right? And there's a world where the offense takes a minute to install. They're dealing with a young quarterback. There's all these things. The offensive line doesn't come together the way you hoped. All these factors that are, I don't want to say stacked against, but they make it challenging. They make it challenging to execute a good offense. And I've said this before. I'll say it again. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, those guys said it takes a true 3 years to get your offense fully installed. And what that means is like getting everyone to know the absolute details, understanding the personnel completely. Now, is the offense going to be good year one? Probably. But in terms of getting it to where it needs to be, it's 3 years. And I think that's another thing, is the time constraint here. So am I super excited EB's here? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to do a great job? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to elevate this group? Absolutely. But I think there's some other things that just make this a tough job. And that's why, I don't think there was a lot of interviews with, like, outside of Bieniemy, like, top flight candidates, quite frankly, because it's a tough position to be in.
Yeah. But I think for EB, of course he wants to be successful as long as he's here. I think his ultimate personal definition of success is making this a top 15 offense this coming year, getting a head coaching job. And whether that's here or somewhere else as new ownership takes over, and he doesn't really care as much about the 3-year long-term. And obviously totally his next stop, he will care about that because he's going to be a head coach. And so it's just a different thing.
I think that point you bring up, that is his ultimate goal. I think the more I think about it, the more it's like that has to be his goal, is that he's taking this to get out of Andy Reid, get out of Patrick Mahomes, get out of Kansas City, and he is expecting, I would imagine, the ball this year and then be gone next year, or be gone to greener pastures, quite frankly.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think to go back to my first kind of thing I said is he needed a place that was challenging enough that it was undeniable when he gets results, but he also needed a place that he thinks he can get results. And I think the fact that he took this job, look, the assistant head coach thing is also, it's not it's icing on the cake, but it's not nothing. Mainly that he's going to get a bigger check because of that. So they're gonna pay him more than he was getting in Kansas City. One, because he's a play caller. Two, because he's assistant head coach. But I also think that Rivera will, people are asking me what that means. To my best guess, it probably means that he is going to be pulled into some of the head coach only type of stuff where Ron has a time management meeting, or Ron has whatever personnel meeting, and where normally it would be just him, he's going to pull EB into that stuff and be like, hey, this is what it looks like. One, I want your input because you're my assistant head coach. And two, I'm kind of letting you shadow me so that you're ready for this job in a way that he wasn't getting in Kansas City. Because that wasn't part of his job and what his responsibilities. And so he is being prepared to be a head coach here in a way that he wasn't. And I think that was probably part of the conversation where Ron is looking at him. I don't know whether he looked at Sean McDermott this way inherently or McDermott was so undeniably good that he gets the job in Buffalo. But Ron has had coaches come off of his staff and get other elevated jobs before. Including the most successful one being McDermott. And I think Bieniemy is coming in with that mindset and somewhat of an agreement between Ron, probably some level Andy, who is very close with Ron and Ron's mentor, and Eric to say look, we all agree this is the plan, right? We all agree this guy should be a head coach. We all agree that this is part of the process. And we all agree that he can't stay in Kansas City because the NFL has clearly said that's not good enough. So let's send you to Ron. You have a chance to be really good there because of the skill position receivers, and you're going to have a chance to build something. You're going to have heavy input on the offensive line and all these things that we've been talking about that are currently incomplete about this roster. And then if you're good, you'll be prepared and you can go spread your wings. And I think that is part of the deal. Everybody knows it. And the best case scenario is that happens, that we're having another conversation a year from now about the new offensive coordinator because Eric Bieniemy just got named the head coach of whoever. I also think, there's a chance that he's named the head coach here, depending on what new ownership thinks of Rivera and how things go this year. That's a different conversation. But I do think that Bieniemy is hoping that a year from now, whatever other problems that we're talking about are not his problem anymore.
Yeah. No, I think I agree. I don't have anything to really add to that, quite frankly.
Anything else to add to the podcast in total about him or about anything that could immediately come next?
Just that I'm excited, and I think it'll be really interesting to see kind of the next thing for me is the coaches that he hires on the staff, because they're kind of the thing. Everyone thinks that, OC is a big deal. It is a big deal. It's a huge deal. But in terms of conveying that message, I think people undervalue skill position, the position coaching hires. And so I would keep an eye on maybe offensive line, maybe quarterback coach. And those are some big deals, I think. Receiver coach, potentially, I think that's less important because of the guys that are in the room. But I think, when you look at what they were doing in Kansas City, it's high level stuff, and it's a little bit different than what Matt Scow's done here. So that would be someone I'd keep an eye on. And then the quarterback coach, you want somebody in there that you trust implicitly, because that's an extension of your voice in the room. And EB will probably be around that a lot. But again, those couple hires I think are going to be really, really telling about, how some of these transitions will go, the young quarterback development and the offensive line. So
Definitely. And look, I think Zampese could be, if that
I'm not saying
went
he's
well,
out of it. Yeah, I'm not saying he's out of it.
Because of the relationship he had with Sam and the ability to translate the offense. He's a guy that's been in multiple systems. Obviously keeping an eye on Drew Terrell, his potential to get the passing game coordinator job in Arizona after he interviewed for the OC job. But like you said, not that I could go in and coach receivers, but you definitely could.
I mean, you'd feel pretty good about. I mean, because it's a good room. It's a bunch of good pros. Yeah. It's a bunch of guys who are going to handle their business. So, like if this was some bunch of slaps, you'd say we got to get somebody really high level in here. But you could probably get somebody. My son could probably go in and coach those guys. Like they'd run the meetings, they do all the stuff they need to do.
All right, if Owen can do it, then I feel confident.
I really feel good about it because I have a lot of faith in that group in that room. So, but again, I'm not saying anybody's out. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes the next couple of days because I do think those are some big dominoes that need to still fall potentially.
Definitely. All right. We will be back, tomorrow. We're going to record on Wednesday. It'll be up on YouTube Thursday morning in your audio feeds with any more stuff. Obviously, Bienemy's press conference is on Thursday, so we'll learn more about exactly what the assistant head coach job is and what he thinks. I'm sure he'll be asked about Sam Howell and all that kind of stuff. So that's Thursday. We'll have coverage on the radio show. And then next week, we have 2 really cool podcasts planned. I'm just going to go ahead and say we're going to do the second one that we talked about. On Monday, we're going to record with Mike Renner from Pro Football Focus. So that'll be like your
he's their lead draft analyst for PFF. He's awesome. He does a great job.
Yeah, I'm very pumped to talk to Mike. He's also a friend of a friend, which is how we got in touch, which is kind of a fun story. So we'll probably have a little.
He's also like a weirdly handsome guy. Have you met Mike in person?
No, I've seen him on television though. And
it's like unfair.
You're looking at the second and third most handsome guys on this podcast next Monday right now. It's up to you, the viewer, what order that we rank in.
I heard a rumor that he was on The Bachelor. He was on The Bachelor. He was a contestant on The Bachelor. Is that true?
I don't know. We'll have to look that up. Or ask him about it. If he's like, no, what are you talking about? Then that'll just be awkward. But, we look forward to that on Monday. This is why you stay around to the end of the pod. We get a little loose. And so that'll be Monday. And then Wednesday / Tuesday, Thursday. Again, audio feeds, we always put it out at first thing in the morning. We're going to do a crossover pod with the Train with the Best podcast, my fitness podcast. My co-host, Chris Gorez, is a guy who's done a ton of combine training over the years. And so we've had Logan on that pod before. As Logan's a trainer, obviously I'm a trainer. But this time of year, we always hear about 40 times, obviously. But like, what does that actually translate to? What are teams looking at with every single drill at the combine and all the stuff that happens behind the scenes? And how do prospects get prepared for that? So we thought that'd be a really kind of cool, unique look at the NFL Combine. We'll record that in person in Indianapolis, which will also be very cool, as opposed to Logan and I staring at each other through computer screens with whoever else is on. So be at the Combine next week. Excited for that. Combine preview with Renner, the very handsome Mike Renner on Monday. And make sure that you're subscribed for all of that. Whether you are watching us on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or again, full circle, a callback, if you will, the very free, very beautiful Odyssey app. Make sure you're subscribed, and we will catch you then. All right, that's enough yapping. For Logan, I'm Craig, and we'll see you not too long from now here on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.